Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are checking out another TNG release. However, this one is very interesting because it's the very first time so far in the TNG line that we've gotten like a version 2 of something. It's the first time we had a repainted version of a previously released figure because we've got ourselves the Quetzalcoatlus with brand new colors. You can see the box pretty much is what you usually see from TNG. You've got the logo, you've got the species name, and an image showing off the newly painted version of the Quetzalcoatlus. If you turn it to the side, you do have some information on the species. Turn it to the other side, pretty much the same thing, and also again the same thing when you turn the box around completely. So very nice looking box, but of course we're most interested in what's inside, so let's pop it open and check it out. So just like we had with the T-Rex, we have another one of those booklets inside that show off all the different figures. Not even all, there actually is more than what they show in here, but a large portion of the figures that are out currently from TNG. We did go over this in the T-Rex, actually, that figure right there review, so you should have already probably seen this if you watched that review, so we don't really need to go over it again. And then here is our Quetzalcoatlus version 2, and it looks pretty good, honestly. I don't know which one I would say I like more. I don't know if I'm more of a fan, if I'm partial to the first version, or if I'm partial to this version, but I can say they did another very good job of choosing the color scheme for it. Definitely a very realistic, very naturalistic coloration, I think, overall for the figure, so that's a plus, and it seems like it's, for the most part, nicely applied. So I'm pretty excited to get a closer look at this one, and then we'll check it out next to the older one after that. So let's go ahead and jump straight to that closer look. So, of course, this, as I said, is the same figure sculpt-wise as the one that we had previously. That means we don't really need to go over the sculpt at all. We only need to go over what differentiates this from the first version, and that would definitely be the paint apps. So you can see we've got some nice coloration here on this one. We have kind of like a striping effect, like a very interesting design there running through the course of the beak. The beak primarily is a gray, but then we have like this darker gray that kind of like patterns up there through the top of the beak. You can also see this lighter tone that kind of creeps into the gray beak, and I like how it just kind of runs up here and then spots in a few places, also circles around the nostrils, which is pretty cool. I definitely appreciate that. I think it looks really nice, and definitely adds a nice element of flashiness to the head of our Quetzalcoatlus. You can also see the crest up here. Now the crest looks okay. It has a little bit of a satin shine to it, which is interesting, but I'm not a huge fan of the paint. I think the yellow looks nice and the brown does look nice, but something about the way it's applied just doesn't look like actual body color to me. Maybe the paint is a little too thick, I'm not too sure. It just has more of like a paint on a figure sort of a look, if you ask me. That's not a big problem or anything, but it's just that one area looks a little questionable. The eye area does have some blue there around it, like a darker blue that sort of transitions to a lighter blue as it moves back. Just only in that spot, honestly, and then the blue is gone. You only see it circle around the eye and lead back a little bit into the neck. You can also see like some yellowish tones there around the eye as well. The jaw, of course, is articulated just like it was the first time around. And we've got some nice coloration for the inside. You have like a variation of like almost like a light orangish, pinkish sort of a tone. It's a very weird tone. And then you have a more definitive pink for the tongue, and then back there in the throat, and you can see the coloration there on the inside of the mouth on the upper side. It all looks pretty good, nice and precise, nicely applied. You also, of course, have a very nicely painted eye with a yellow and a black pupil. The eye does sport a gloss coat as well. As you lead down here to the underside of the throat, you can see we have a pinkish tone pick up briefly before it tapers off as you move down into the throat. This is the one area that I wasn't a big fan of with the first Quetzalcoatlus, still not a big fan of it with this one, is how abrupt the beak just sort of ends here, like there's no transition to that pinkish tone from the gray. I think they could have found some sort of a way to make that a little smoother, maybe even the way that they, apply the articulated jaw. If they could have just worked on a better way to make that look a little bit better. Like, it doesn't look terrible when the mouth is open, but when it's closed, I think it just looks a little bit more off. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being overly picky. As you move down into the neck, you see that white tone continue. You can also see a gray down underneath, kind of like a grayish wash it looks like as you move down through the course of the neck. You also start to see some more gray spots picking up as you lead down. And then as you lead into the body, you have this very cool, kind of like a bluish gray tone. And there's also a dry brushing over the top, really helping to highlight all of the pycnofibers of our Quetzalcoatlus. It's a little bit more intense up here on the top, but they continue that dry brushing as you do move through the majority of the figure. As you lead down into the skin, you can see a bit of a different coloration that we have here, almost like grayish purple. It's very interesting. There's also some browns that you can see have been applied, kind of dry brushing out all of the skin texture right there. You see that light, sort of like a white tone run down through the course of the arm leading out into the wing, but there's also more of the purplish tones picking up, and you continue to see that as you move through the entire wing. Again, it has that mixture of like purples and sort of like grays and even some brownish tones and stuff showing up. They've done a very good job, I think, in applying a bit of variation of color overall. You can even see the same thing for the underside of the wing here. It does look really good when it comes to the paintwork, and I like that there is a bit of variation of color down there into the wings. You can also see that they've highlighted the scoots running down the course of the hands and painted the nails with a very nice glossy black. Maybe a little bit too intense, I think, as far as the application of that goes. It's just like a little sloppy, but it's not the worst thing in the world. As you lead back, pretty much the same thing back here with the rear leg. Again, you have the purples, those kind of like bluish tones and grayish tones and stuff. And then you lead down into the foot, also painted the same way as we saw in the hand with the, coloration, that darker black there, highlighting the scoots, and then the black for the nails for our Quetzalcoatlus. You're going to see pretty much, of course, the same thing over here. I couldn't see the paint changing pretty much at all from one side to the other, so that means everything looks just the same over here as it did on the first side. And when you run down through the underside of our Quetzalcoatlus, you see that white tone extend into the stomach and chest. You can also see some orangish tones. You've got yellowish tones and pinkish tones. Quite a bit, again, of variation of color running here along the underside. Same deal leading out into the wings on the underside as well. Again, just tons of variation of color applied to this. So overall, that is a very nicely painted Quetzalcoatlus, of course, nicely sculpted, and I'm not really sure if I like this one better than the first one. Let's go ahead and compare the two and see if we can make a decision as far as that goes. So here is both the first and now the newest versions of the Quetzalcoatlus from TNG, and I will say this is a very hard decision. I don't know if maybe you could look at these two as maybe one being a male, one being a female. They both kind of have brighter, flashier colors, but at the same time, very nice natural colors. I really don't think I could pick one over the other. It's just like an extremely, extremely hard decision to make because both paint apps, both paint schemes look very good, very natural. Neither, in my opinion, is any more spectacular than the other. I do like that there seems to be a little bit more paintwork added to the beak of this one. But again, they both look really good, no matter what angle you look at them from as well. Again, they both look phenomenal. Absolutely the same sculpt. If there was ever any question about that, you can very clearly see they are the same sculpt for sure. But again, the paint schemes, the paint apps of both, I think, are really nicely done. Very well done overall. So I don't know. I really can't make a decision as far as which one I like more. I'm definitely a fan of this new version, but I also really still quite like the older version. Again, this is just too tough for me, I think, to figure out. We don't need to do any sizes, comparisons, any of that stuff, because we've already done that with the Quetzalcoatlus the first time. We really just needed to take a look again at what was new with this figure. And honestly, again, it's a really well done figure. The sculpt, of course, is fantastic. It was the first time around. It is this time around. It's probably one of my favorite Quetzalcoatlus figures that are out on the market anywhere. The sculpt is just really nicely done, very highly detailed. I think the only area that they maybe could have applied a little more detail to would have been the beak, but even still, I think the beak does look really quite nice. And of course, again, the coloration this time around is really well done. That's the only thing that differentiates this from the first version would be the coloration, and I think they've done a very good job on the overall paint apps of this one. Outside of the crest is a little questionable. It doesn't look bad by any means. It just looks a little bit more like obvious paint rather than body color. But everything else seems to be really smoothly applied, especially when you look at that white tone and the way it creeps up into the gray of the face there in the beak. It looks really good, very natural. And as you move through the course of the figure, just like with usual, you can see TNG has absolutely zero laziness when it comes to the amount of paint they apply to their figures. There's a lot of variation of color moving through, helping to give you a very realistic and lifelike version of a Quetzalcoatlus. Again, I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to my good friend Dino Mike Mac for helping me to acquire this one. These are definitely harder to get here in the United States, and still quite a mystery to me as far as their release schedule and when these might pop up. I don't know anywhere right off the bat where you can purchase this one right now, but of course I will look around, see if I can find a link for you guys. If I can, I will include it in the description. If I don't now and I find one later, I'll come back and edit the description and add it then. But either way, if you have a chance to pick this up, I definitely recommend it, so make sure you do, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.